The film begins. Today is Laura and Ben's wedding anniversary. To celebrate this special day, the couple sets out on a short trip that begins by the sea. Surrounded by blue waters, they share a few quiet moments together before planning their next destination. That's when Laura spots a distant island. She insists they should go there. At first, Ben is reluctant, but seeing his wife's excitement, he agrees with a smile. This is our day, let's discover something new. Neither of them realizes that this decision will change their lives forever. They lower their small rubber boat into the water and head toward the island. But as soon as they reach the shore, they realize that things often look more beautiful from afar than they truly are. The place is silent, deserted, almost eerie. Still, Laura says, since we're already here, why not explore it properly? As they wander around, they come across rusted old machines. From the look of them, they guess the island might once have been a stop for trading ships, or perhaps the site of some scientific experiments. Reaching the highest point, they take a few pictures and enjoy a brief moment of peace. Then Ben notices the sky darkening. A storm seems to be approaching. Realizing the danger, he decides they should head back. But just as they set their boat in the water, the storm grows violent. The waves are so strong that sailing back becomes impossible. Forced to abandon the attempt, they pull the boat ashore and resign themselves to spending the night on the island. In one corner, they put together a small shelter, light a weak fire, and endure a long, restless night by its dim glow. The next morning turned out to be far more difficult than they expected. When they looked out toward the sea, their boat was nowhere to be found. Laura suspected that perhaps Ben had forgotten to drop the anchor in his haste, but Ben was certain he had. He believed the violent storm from the night before must have dragged it away. Determined to search, they set out in their small dinghy, scanning the endless waters. But no matter how far they went, the boat was nowhere in sight. Their eyes kept searching the horizon only to be met with emptiness. Slowly, even Ben began to fear that Laura might be right, that he had made a mistake. Reluctantly, he admitted it could be his fault. Then came another realization: the boat's diesel supply was running dangerously low. He quickly shut off the engine and began rowing with paddles instead. Drifting aimlessly in the open ocean was too great a risk. It was better to return to the island and wait for help. But survival itself was becoming a battle. Hunger and thirst gnawed at them. Climbing to the island's highest peak, they searched for any sign of life, any hope of rescue. All they found was silence and desolation. Then, from the edge of a cliff, they discovered a stream of clear water trickling down. They drank greedily and ate a few dry sticks of wild fruit nearby, regaining just enough strength. It was there that Ben realized, if they truly wanted to be rescued, they needed to draw attention. Together, they gathered wood and spelled out a massive SOS across the sand. With no phone, no radio, no way to call directly, all they could do now was wait, whether for a month, a year, or perhaps forever. While exploring further, Ben stumbled upon 3 graves high on the hill. Proof that others had once been stranded here and had died here. But with so little food, both were growing weaker. Eventually, Laura collapsed from exhaustion. Alarmed, Ben carried her back to their small hut and laid her down. That night he sat awake, tormented. Waiting for rescue now seemed hopeless. By dawn, he had made up his mind. He would no longer sit idle. With wood and stone, he crafted a sharp weapon. If they were to survive, he would have to fight for their lives. The next morning, when Laura was feeling a little better, Ben took her to the other side of the island. There, they stumbled upon a huge colony of penguins. The moment Laura saw them, she understood what Ben intended to do. She was horrified. The thought of killing something so innocent just to fill their stomachs was unbearable to her. But Ben knew the truth: if he didn't, they wouldn't survive much longer. Reluctantly, he struck one down. For the first time in days, they had a proper meal. Strength slowly returned to their frail bodies. With food and fresh water now secured, a fragile sense of stability crept into their lives. But it didn't last. The weight for rescue grew heavier with each passing day. Even though their basic needs were met, the endless waiting gnawed at their minds like a sharp needle, piercing, constant, unrelenting. Hoping to find more, they returned to the spot where they had once seen the penguin colony. But this time, there was nothing, only silence. Not a single penguin remained. The sight broke Laura's spirit. She felt as if they had been thrown back to the start, trapped once more between hunger and despair. Frustrated and desperate, Laura pleaded, "We should go back into the ocean. Maybe a passing ship will see us and rescue us." But Ben refused. The sea meant uncertainty, starvation, and dangers beyond count. At least on the island, they had some safety. Laura, however, was consumed with fear. The thought of starving to death haunted her relentlessly. Then, one night, a flicker of hope appeared, a ship's light glimmering in the distance. Both of them ran to the shore, shouting at the top of their lungs. But their cries were swallowed by the roaring sea. They realized too late, if only they had lit a fire, sent up smoke, maybe the ship would have noticed them. In panic, Laura tried to spark a fire immediately. But Ben had another idea. Without hesitation, he dragged their small boat into the water. "I'll go to them. I'll signal them myself. This is our only chance. I can't let it slip away." Laura screamed after him, "Come back. It's too dangerous." But Ben wouldn't stop. He rowed with every ounce of strength he had, driving the boat toward the distant vessel. And then, the inevitable happened. Just a short distance into the vast ocean, the engine sputtered and died. The last of their fuel was gone. The boat drifted helplessly, refusing to go any further. Although Ben had managed to get far out into the ocean, he never reached the ship. His hope shattered right in front of him. Back on shore, Laura stood waiting, eyes fixed on the horizon. She waited, and waited, but Ben never returned. The sight crushed her spirit completely. Helpless, she walked back to their hut, collapsed inside, and wept until exhaustion consumed her. At dawn, a sudden knock startled her. She rushed to the door, and there stood Ben, battered and bleeding. With a cry, she threw her arms around him and pulled him inside. Through ragged breaths, Ben explained what had happened. On his return, a monstrous wave had slammed into his boat. The current hurled him against a jagged rock, tearing his leg open. Somehow, he had clung to life, crawling and dragging himself across the island until he reached her. His injury was grave. Laura heated a knife in the fire until it glowed red, then pressed it against the wound to seal it shut. The searing pain was unbearable. Ben screamed once before falling unconscious. Laura now understood the full weight of survival rested on her shoulders. She would have to find food, fetch water, keep the fire burning, because Ben could no longer move. When he finally awoke the next morning, he spoke in a broken voice, filled with regret. "I never meant to leave you alone. I knew it would be hard for you. I just wanted to save us." Laura silenced him gently. "Don't think like that. I'll take care of everything. We'll get through this." And so the days dragged on. Over a month had now passed on this desolate island. Their only comfort was each other's company. Then one day, while Laura was out gathering wood, she noticed a chilling change. The air had grown colder. In the distance, the mountains were now blanketed with snow. Winter was coming, and with it, a far deadlier struggle. She hurried back and told Ben, "We can't stay here. We need to leave now." But Ben shook his head firmly. He was in no condition to travel. Outwardly, Laura nodded, but inside, dread gnawed at her. She knew the truth. If they stayed, the cold would kill them. Deep down, she realized something she had tried to ignore. Ben had always hesitated when it came to hard decisions. That hesitation had already cost them the ship they missed, the chances they lost. And now, for the first time, Laura admitted it to herself. If she had insisted back then, if she had forced him to take the risk and go into the sea in search of help, maybe that ship would have seen them. But regret was useless now. The island was tightening its grip on them, and the storm of winter was approaching fast. Laura knew one thing with absolute certainty: if she didn't act soon, this lonely island would become their final grave. And so, one night, while Ben lay fast asleep, Laura quietly gathered what little she could carry and slipped away into the freezing darkness. Her heart held only one thought: she would return with help. Someone had to take that step, and if not Ben, then it had to be her. But the journey ahead was brutal. Winter had fully descended. Ice-cold winds howled endlessly. The world was buried in white, a barren wilderness of snow and silence. Still, Laura pressed on, driven by sheer resolve. This time, it was do or die. Nights, she collapsed on the open snow. Mornings, she forced herself up, staggering forward again. At one point, her strength failed, her vision blurred, her legs buckled. For a moment, she thought she could go no further. But then, scooping a handful of snow, she rubbed it against her face, shocking herself awake, forcing her eyes open and her feet to move. 3 grueling days later, she saw it, faint but real. A building painted red, rising from the whiteness. A research station. Or perhaps, a miracle. Laura broke into a desperate run. Inside, there were no people, but food, plenty of it. Warm clothes, supplies. Relief washed over her in waves. She wrapped herself in heavy coats, ate until her stomach was full, and began searching for signs of life. Though the rooms were empty, she found something that made her heart race: a motorboat. It was enough. Hope surged back into her veins. She quickly loaded the boat with what she could and sped back toward the hut. But by the time she arrived, night had fallen. A furious storm had ripped through the island. The hut was gone, reduced to wreckage. Beneath the ruins lay Ben, buried in snow and debris, his body stiff and pale as ice. Panicked, Laura dragged him free, heaved him onto the motorboat, and rushed him back to the research station. There, she wrapped him in layer after layer of warm clothing, pressing heat against his frozen skin. Slowly, agonizingly, his body began to thaw. His breath returned, faint at first, then stronger. They had shelter, warmth, food, and a place to wait in safety. Days passed, and Ben's strength began to return. One night, they even danced together, fragile, clumsy, but alive. And then, finally, the day came, the one they had dreamed of for 42 long days. A team of scientists arrived at the station. Laura ran into Ben's arms, tears streaming down her face. For the first time, she let herself believe it was over. They were safe, and so ended their harrowing story, not just of survival, but of hope, courage, and the will to keep going when all seemed lost. Please like and subscribe for more video like this. Thanks for watching.